Good morning, class. So, today we'll talk about the viruses, then we'll come to the plant kingdom. As we have completed the kingdom fungi, kingdom Mondra, and kingdom Protista in the previous classes, so now we'll talk about the viruses and then we'll go to the higher kingdoms, the Plantae and Animalia. So, what are viruses now? Viruses are intracellular. Intracellular means they are present inside the cell and obligate parasite. I told you the difference between obligate and facultative. So obligate are those that are true to whatever they are adapted to. If they are parasite, they will remain parasite, and if they are saprophyte, then they will remain saprophyte in whatever the conditions are present. Then the viruses are self-replicating. That means they have their own DNA machinery or RNA. The RNA viruses are also there and DNA viruses are also there. So whatever the machinery they have for replication, whatever the genetic material they have, they use that for their replication process. That's why they are self-replicating. They are non-cellular as they have no cells in them. Then they also lack any cellular organelles. Any cellular organelles, what are the cellular organelles like ribosomes, mitochondria, all this, these are completely absent in the case of viruses. And they use protein synthetic machinery of the host cell. So viruses are self-replicating, that is they enter the host cell and starts to use the machinery of the host once they are inside the cell. Until they are not inside the cell, they are dead. So viruses are also said to be the connecting link between the living and non-living. So it is not still sure, not the category is not decided for viruses to keep them in living or non-living. So as viruses are the simplest and most primitive organism, hence it is very difficult to assign them any rank in the living kingdom. So it is also not easy to define the features of viruses. So within the accepted framework of living beings, they are not having or they are not sharing all the characters of a living being, neither they are sharing all the characters of a non-living. That's why they are kept in between the two. So what are the living aspects of viruses? So viruses have genetic material, all the living organisms have genetic material. So this is the connecting link between the living beings and the viruses. Then they can mutate. That what is mutate? That they can change their form from one form to another. That's what COVID-19 is doing right now. And they can grow. So they have the ability to grow, but inside the host cell, not outside the body of the host. They can be transmitted from one host to the another. Transmission is very easy in case of viruses, and that's why very much precautions have to be taken when some viral disease is there. And they are also capable of multiplication within a host. Then they react to heat. The reaction, that is the react to stimuli. This is the main characteristic of an of a living being. That's why as they can react to radiation and chemicals, that's why viruses are called to be as the living. So then they show irritability, that is they have some, if they are kept in exposure to some chemical, then they show some having some chemical reactions going on in them, and also show some reaction to the chemical. Then they bring about enzymatic changes. Enzymatic changes, as the structure of viruses is the outermost covering is the capsid. This you can see, this is the capsid. Capsid is the protein coat, and one unit of capsid is called capsomere, and this is the genetic material. This is what the virus is composed of, and they are very much efficient in infecting and causing disease to living beings. The DNA and proteins of viruses are similar in composition and structure to those of the higher organisms. And now, what are the non-living aspects of the viruses? They can be crystallized like an ordinary chemical and stored in a bottle or test tube indefinitely. So these viruses can be stored in a chemical or bottle by crystallizing them. The As they are made up of protein, that's why the crystallization process is very much easier in case of the viruses. So the outside of the host, the viruses are inert. Inert means they do not show any reaction. And then there is no cell wall, no cell membrane or cytoplasm in the case of viruses. Also, there are no cell organelles and there is no metabolism. So this is why we cannot keep viruses in the living as well as non-living, and that's why they are said to be the connecting link between the living and non-living. So these are also some very much unique characteristics of viruses. Uh, Let me show you the diagram of a bacteriophage. Now the bacteriophage is those virus that affects bacteria. So according to the host they infect, the name of the viruses is given. Now what are the unique characteristics of viruses? The presence of only DNA or RNA, not both. Then capacity to reproduce from the sole nucleic acid. They have the capacity to produce from one single nucleic acid. They do not show any cell division and they use the metabolic machinery of the host cell to replicate. So these are some unique characteristics of the viruses. So viruses are obligate parasites. That's why they are completely dependent on the host for its survival, and they cannot be cultured on inanimate media. Inanimate media means that when there is no presence of any other living being, then the growth of viruses is not possible because the virus will not be able to survive. Then viral proteins have high molecular weight. The protein present in the capsid of the virus are of very much high molecular weight and they can be transmitted from one host to another either directly or through vectors. So vectors are those living or non-living beings that are able or that are helpful in carrying the disease from one to another. So the classification of viruses, a variety of criteria are used in classifying the viruses. So the earlier the viruses were categorized into several categories based on the host. So what the host they are infecting, the viruses are divided on the basis of that. So if the virus is infecting a plant, then it is a plant virus. If the virus is affecting an animal, it is an animal virus. Then the bacteriophages are those the viruses that affect the bacteria. Cyanophages, the viruses that are affecting the cyanobacteria. What is cyanobacteria? It's a blue-green algae. So now the mycoviruses, that the viruses that affects the mycoplasmas, and the phycoviruses that affects the algae. But the modern system of classification of viruses was proposed by Turnier and Loof Horn, and it is the most accepted one. It is also accepted by the International Committee on Virus Nomenclature, which was set up in the year 1966. So now the new and the modern classification is based on the following characteristics: what is the type of the nucleic acid, then what is the molecular weight of the virus, and molecular weight of the virus means the combined molecular weight of both the protein and the genetic material that it is made up of, and then what is the size and shape of the virus, what is the symmetry of the virus, then what number of protein subunits in a capsid. The protein subunit are the capsomeres. So how much the number of that capsomeres are present in one capsid also helps in determining, also helps in classifying the virus. Diameter of the nucleic acid coil, the presence of an outer envelope, and the symptoms of viruses. What are the symptoms a virus is causing on the host cell? It also helps in determining this. So on the basis of the nucleic acid dependence, the viruses are divided into main four types. The single-stranded DNA. Single-stranded DNA means they have DNA and which is of only one strand. As we all know, in most higher organisms, we have double-stranded DNA. But there are some viruses, they have single-stranded DNA with which only one strand. The example of this is coliphage virus. So coliphage virus again is the one which affects the E. coli. That's why the name coliphage. The double-stranded DNA, those viruses that have double strands DNA, the herpes virus is one example of that. Then the single-stranded RNA. The single-stranded RNA is TMV, tobacco mosaic virus. It is one of the most commonly studied virus and it is of single-stranded RNA. Then the double-stranded RNA is the example of reoviruses. So this was all about the viruses. The Theo Diner was the one who first discovered a new infectious agent and he called it virus. So now the morphology and the study of different viruses will be easy. But first of all, let me tell you what are the bacteriophages, because they are very important as bacteria are mostly infected by these viruses and they become replicative and start to cause many other diseases. So the cycle that is used by the method that is used by the viruses to cause diseases in bacteria is the lytic cycle. So what is lytic cycle? In the lytic cycle, as the virus land means it as it settles on the bacteria surface, and after landing on the surface, it having the tail fiber. You can see the tail fiber. uh, the tail fiber is bent, and that brings the end plate. This is the end plate. If they bend in this direction, the end plate will be on the surface now, and that surface also contracts, and this will push the central tubular part of the tail. Now the central tubular part of the tail will be inside the host cell, that is the bacteria, and that's why the nucleic acid of the this virus will be transferred into the bacteria. And now this nucleic acid of the virus will start to uh, accumulate, or will start to integrate. Integrate means it gets stick in some places of the DNA, or the RNA of the bacteria, and starts to multiply by using the genetic machinery of bacteria. And this capsid is left behind, and it forms a new capsid on its own. So the virus is a very dangerous organism, as it causes many harmful diseases, and its cure is uh, very much difficult, as it uses our own machinery, and we cannot even kill it, because for killing one virus we have to kill one organism, or the host on which it is feeding on. So now there are some viroids also. What are viroids? Viroids are small single strand circular RNA agents which infect plants. So these are the RNA agents. They infect mostly the plants. They differ from the RNA viruses in three major aspects. The aspects in which the viroids are different from the RNA viruses is that they are very much minute in size, and the genome does not encode any proteins. So that's why these are the viroids are the kind of viruses that do not have any protein covering outside them. They are just the RNA. That's why they are very much smaller in size as compared to the viruses. So this was all for the in the case of viruses. Now we'll talk about the kingdom Plantae. So as we all know that kingdom Plantae includes all the eukaryotic chlorophyll containing organisms, and these are commonly called as the plants. So now the kingdom Plantae includes mostly those organisms that are having plants that are having the chlorophyll in them. So chlorophyll is a pigment that is present inside the leaf, the chloroplast of the leaf, and imparts the green color to it. And this green color signifies that this particular plant is autotrophic, and it have the ability to produce its own food. But it's not always true, because there are few members that are partially heterotrophic. That is, some insectivorous plants, they are partially heterotrophic, means that they can prepare their own food, but they are also dependent on the insects for their survival. So the plants have an eukaryotic structure with prominent chloroplast and a cell wall mainly made up of cellulose. So presence of cell wall is distinctly a characteristic of a plant, because cell wall is completely absent in case of animal cells. So if the cell wall is present, then it is a plant. Another what There are different and distinct life cycles in the case of plants. The main phases are the diploid sporophyte and the haploid gametophyte. Diploid means 2n and haploid means n. So these are the two life cycles between which the complete life of a plant switches. Once it is 2n, then after meiosis it converts to n phase, and again the cycle goes on to n to n, that I'll discuss in different cases. So the length of the haploid and diploid phases, and whether these phases are free living or dependent on others, vary among different groups. That is, the haploid phase is dependent on others, means there's some cases when the haploid phase is dependent on the diploid phase, and there are some cases when the diploid phase is dependent on the haploid phase. So this dependence of one another of the diploid and haploid phase is called as alternation of generation. This is mainly seen in the pteridophytes, but also some examples of the bryophytes. So these are some example of Plantae kingdom, but thus we'll talk first of all about the classification of the kingdom Plantae. So the plant kingdom is divided into main two types, the cryptogamia and the phanerogamia. So what is the cryptogamia? The cryptogamia are those which have no flowers, and they are the non-flowering plants. Then the Phanerogamia, they includes the flowering plants. And the Cryptogamia now includes the Thallophyta, Bryophyta, and the Pteridophyta. And Thallophyta is again divided. Thallophyta are those which have thallus and the body is not differentiated into root, stem, and leaf. Now the Thallophyta is divided into four. The bacteria we have already done. Algae will do in the next topic. Then the fungi we have already done. Lichens is the we have done. It is the association between fungi and algae, where algae is the autotroph. That's why it is helpful in preparation of food, and fungi provides the protection to the algae. That's why they are living in the symbiotic association. Now Phanerogamia. These are gymnospermy and the angiosperms. Angiosperms are the fruit bearing plants, and angiosperms are again divided into two, the monocots and the dicots. So let's start with the algae. So algae is autotroph, that is, it is also able to prepare its own food. They are mostly aquatic and only some are terrestrial, that is, mostly they live in the water, but only some cases they are also present in the terrestrial condition, that is the land conditions. And there are few algae that grow on other plants. The algae that grow on other plants are called as epiphytes. Epi means on the other, on the upper portion of other plants. So the term algae in the Latin it means seaweeds. So it was first introduced by Linnaeus in the year 1753, and that means the Hepaticea. So the first term for algae he used was Hepaticea, but later on the growth and on watching the structure of the Hepaticea, the name was changed to algae because they look like seaweeds. The algae comprise of a large heterogeneous assemblage of plants which are diverse in habitat. Means the members of the algae are not having very much similar characters. They are diverse. That is, the size can be different from very smaller. You can see these are also algae, and these are also algae, which looks like a complete plant. So the size is diverse, and the physiology, biochemistry, and reproduction is also different in case of different algae. Uh, but the sharp demarcation between the two groups, that is the autophytic and the heterophytic, is that the sex organs are of, especially of the female sex organ in algae, are unicellular. So in the case of algae, that is a lower plant, the sex organs are mostly unicellular, but in the case of higher plants it is not so. The female or the male sex organs are mostly multicellular, and also there is no embryo formation in the algae, but in the higher plants you will see the formation of embryo. However, the reproductive structures of some groups of algae are apparently multicellular, and the sterile tissue is generally considered as vegetative. It is same in case of lower and higher plants. The sterile tissues are vegetative. Vegetative means they do not have the reproductive ability. And as we go on further to the bryophytes, from here starts the scale of evolution, and from here the multicellular sex organs will be found. After algae, we will study the bryophytes, and in from bryophytes we will see that the occurrence of multicellular female or male sex organs will be there. So algae was distinctly and differently described by many scientists, but the algae was in simple terms was defined as a large simple plant which display a spectrum of photosynthetic pigments, and they also evolve oxygen during the process of photosynthesis. So now what are the characteristics of algae? Algae are chlorophyll bearing autotrophic thalloid plant. These are thalloid, means they do not, the body is not differentiated into the stem, roots, and leaves. Almost all algae are aquatic. Almost word is used because some are also terrestrial. The plant body may be unicellular to large, robust, multicellular structures. As I told you, the size varies. That's why it can be unicellular also and multicellular structures also. So the multicellular complex thalli, they lack vascular tissue and also show little differentiation of tissues. And the sex organs are generally unicellular, but when multicellular, all the cells are fertile, and in most cases the entire structure does not have any protection jacket. The In the case of algae, unicellular, the sex organs are unicellular, but there are some examples. which have multicellular organs also. But in if we take the cases of multicellular sex organs in case of algae, then there is no protection jacket present in the sex organs. That's why they have to be protected, and they are used very less as compared to the unicellular. So that in case of algae, the unicellular sex organs are considered more better as compared to the multicellular sex organs. So the zygote formed after the sexual reproduction undergoes further development either by mitosis or meiosis, but the embryo formation is not there in case of algae. The occurrence of algae, the algae are ubiquitous. What does the term ubiquitous means? It is present everywhere in distribution. They are found in the fresh water as well as marine water, sometimes on the soil, on rock, or epiphytes. Epiphytes means growing on other plants, or as parasites. They are also parasites and grow on animals, plants, and they are also found in the desert conditions. So they are ubiquitous, present everywhere. So based on the habitat, the algae may be categorized as the aquatic algae, terrestrial algae, and there are some algae that are of remarkable habitats. That is, they are present in some very unique habitats, like the halophytic algae. The halophytic algae are those which are growing in the highly concentrated salt lakes. Highly concentrated salt lakes are those which have very much high salt concentration. So there are some algae which grow in those lakes. Now, symbiotic algae, the algae that grow in association with fungi or bryophyte or gymnosperm or angiosperm. So, there are many algae which grow in symbiotic associations, that is, mutual dependence upon one another. Maybe they be present in the mutual dependence on bryophyte also, gymnosperm also, fungi also, and angiosperm also. The symbiotic association between algae and fungi is called as the lichen. Then the cryptophytic algae are those that are growing in the ice or snow condition, and they provide very much attractive colors because they are algae are colorful. That's why they are also providing very colorful texture to those snow and ice conditions. Thermophytes, the thermal algae, they are found in hot spring deserts with a uh, temperature of about 50 to 70 degrees Celsius. Then they are epiphyte. Epiphyte, they grow on other plants. For example, algae on algae. Some algae are there which are present on other algae. Then algae on bryophytes, algae on angiosperms, and many are other examples. Now, the thallus organization is unicellular algae. That is only one cell. One cell is present, like in case of the chlorella. Chlorella is a this is the chlorella. Only one cell is present. That's why it is a unicellular algae. Then there are some multicellular algae also, which are colonial. Colonial means they are growing in colonies. Uh, they are present loose aggregation of cells. Their cells are many in number, but the association is not very much tight. The association is very loose, and some mucilage, uh, that is mucus, is present for connecting those different cells together. Then one another example of multicellular algae is Cenobium. What is Cenobium? When a colony has definite number of cells with a definite shape and arrangement. The Cenobium is the condition जब कॉलोनी में बहुत सारे डिफरेंट तरह के सेल हो, बट जितने भी सेल उसमें प्रेजेंट हो वो सब डिफरेंट शेप के हों और अरेंजमेंट भी सबका डिफरेंट हो, सो दैट it looks very much odd in when we view it, and that's why it is called a cenobium. The cenobium motile, it can be motile as well as non-motile. Motile when the flagella is present, and non-motile when there are no flagellas. So now we'll talk about the different types of algae. So the different types of algae will the on the basis of the pigment they contain, the algae are of mostly three types: the chlorophyceae, picophyceae, and rhodophyceae. There are some higher algae that is not in your syllabus. So the chlorophyceae is containing the green algae. Chloro word is mostly used for the chloroplast. That's why these are the green algae, and they contain chlorophyll pigment in them. Then the picophyceae. So the picophyceae are those algae which do not have other than which have pigment other than the chlorophyll, and that's why the term chlorophyceae is not used, because the puco xanthin pigment is present. That's why they are the picophyceae. the then comes the rhodophyceae. They are brown algae, and they are very much useful. The brown algae are the ones which are very much useful, as they are used for making alginates. Alginates are used as in also some food industries for the preparation of emulsifiers, then ice creams and medicines, and also in paints, because they are providing the texture of concentrated concentrated so that the mixture can be bind very easily. So they are working as a binding agent, and that's why they are very much important in the food and medicine industries. So these are the three algae. Now we'll talk about the reproduction in algae. So the reproduction in algae is of three types. In most cases, the reproduction is of three types. The reproduction in algae is vegetative, then asexual, and sexual. So vegetative reproduction is by fragmentation. What is fragmentation? Fragmentation is the most common vegetative method of reproduction in algae. The filamentous thallus, when the thallus is filamentous, it breaks down into fragments. Filamentous means it is a long cylinder-like structure, and it breaks down into many fragments, and then each fragment grows into a new thallus. So fragmentation takes place due to the mechanical pressure. What is the reason because of which the fragmentation occurs? If the mechanical pressure is applied, or the insect bite is there. And the examples of some algae which undergo this type of reproduction are Eulothrix, Spirogyra, and Oceteloria. Then the fission is also a type. The fission is common in desmids and diatoms, and also in other unicellular algae. In this, the cell divides mitotically into two and is separated by a septum. Mitotically means first the cell grow in size, then it breaks down in from between, and the two daughter cells or the daughter thallus are formed. Budding is also an example of vegetative reproduction. Then in the asexual reproduction, different spores are present. So mainly the spore are useful in the formation of asexual reproduction. The zoospores are flagellated asexual characters and are formed in the reproductive body of zoosporangium. Sporangium is the structure that bears the spores. So zoospores are those which are able to move from one place to another, and they have flagella. And then comes the aplanospores. Aplanospores are those which are formed under unfavorable conditions, because they cannot move from one place to another, and that's why when the favorable conditions are not there, the aplanospores are formed and the cell wall is present, and they remain dormant till the conditions are favorable. Then afterwards they start to perform the process of reproduction. Then the tetraspores are also there, which are non-motile spores formed in some members. These are not present in all the algae, but some members of Rhodophyceae and Phaeophyceae. Then the sexual reproduction. The sexual reproduction means the formation and fusion of gametes. The gametes are formed in gametangia, is a structure in which the gametes are formed. What is the process that is used by the for the formation of gametes? The simple mitotic division, or sometimes the reduction division also. The reduction division is the meiotic, and two divisions there are there, the mitotic and meiotic divisions. So mitotic division is the one which is also used, and the 2n remains 2n, that is no reduction will be there in the case of nucleus. But if the meiotic division occurs, that is the reduction division, the 2n condition will change to n. So if the mitotic occurs, then the diploid gametes will be formed, but if the meiotic division will occur, then the haploid gamete will be formed. So depending on upon the morphological and physiological characteristics of the gametes, sexual reproduction can be isogamy, anisogamy, and oogamy. So in isogamy, the reproduction and the fusing gametes are morphologically similar, that is they have same structure and size, and morphology means the appearance which is shown by the outside. So if the morphology is same, then they are called the isogamy. It is an example of Chlamydomonas, Eulothrix, and Spirogyra. These all show the type of isogamous reproduction. The anisogamy, the fusing gametes, are morphologically as well as physiologically dissimilar, and they are formed on the different gametangia. So the macrogamete, the larger one in size, is the female, and the smaller is the microgamete, the sperm or the male. And this smaller one have flagella also, because it is being transferred to the female, that is the larger in size. Then the one is oogamy. What happens in the oogamy? The fusing gametes are totally different and they are enough to be called as male and female gametes. In isogamy, only the structure and the size is different, but oogamy, the both are completely different in all the aspects, and that's why they are completely distinct as male and female, and the two when they fuse together they form new gametes by the process of mitotic or meiotic division. So now the bryophytes we'll do in the next class. Thank you.